Sometime late last night, I set this up, and I'm not sure I'm terribly in the mood for it now, but after I've gone through the effort, and it wasn't a lot, but of reading the rules and setting it up, I figure I ought to give it a play, even if it isn't maybe the top thing on my list at the day. This is Pandemic. Again, this is a first look for me, giving it the solo treatment. So, let me try to explain. Among other things, it's a game, it's a cooperative game, but a fully cooperative game. And I've never actually played one of these before, except maybe in, well, there's the Cities game by Psychology Today or something, American Psychology, I don't know which is kind of, but there's still a winner or a loser in that. In this, the players are the winner or they are the loser as a whole. So playing it solitaire actually isn't too different from playing a multiplayer, except that maybe you don't have the same interactions. I think it's probably more similar to playing a multiplayer with a bunch of newer players, because you're going to be more apt to share information and not have your own little private goals that have nothing to do with the game, maybe, on your first few plays, I would guess. Anyway, we got a bunch of diseases, and they're represented by these colored cubes. And they're outbreaking across the world. Some of them better than others. They're kind of randomly placed. And we see yellow has actually, whatever that is a bit stronger and more dangerous than the others, which is kind of a good thing, because it'll give my various researchers and it'll give the anti-epidemic faction, the players, something to target a little easier. So, at first, this is obviously the more damaging and dangerous of them, so they want to concentrate on this. And that's cool, because as they find cures to particular diseases, they can eradicate them, and that'll buy them time, perhaps, to take off the others. Now, buying time is going to be important, because since I saw that there was a more complex game, or more difficult, or whatever, I took the most difficult and put 6 different epidemic cards in the deck. They're spaced out somewhat regularly, but not rigorously so, which is to say you split the deck into 6 piles and shuffle an epidemic into each, and then pile the whole thing down. These list locations of outbreaks. Well, outbreaks isn't the right word. Outbreaks is something else. Locations of where a disease comes. It gives you the color coding of the disease, and they were used in the initial setup. And those cards can be used again, and they can actually end up being recycled in a dangerous sort of way, where they end up on top of the deck. I'll explain that in a bit. But we have the Center for Disease Control down here. That'll be the only research facility at the beginning of the game. More can be built. And there's 5 players available, but only 4 can actually play. And again, of course, I'm playing with the maximum number. I've left the operations expert out. I did this at random. He's able to build research stations more easily. But each of these have a special ability or special abilities, which maybe make actions that would be otherwise available a little easier or a little cheaper for them. So each turn's broken. Each player turn is broken into a number of different segments. First, you take your actions, trying to work on curing and helping the rest of the team or whatever. Then you draw 2 cards to add to your hand from here. And your hand has a hard limit of 7 on it. If it exceeds that, you have to discard. unless you have some special event cards, which you can play at that point. And then you take on the role of the infector. All that really means is after each player's turn, the diseases expand a little bit or grow. Your base actions are specified not only in the rules, but also on these little cards here. And they're fairly simple. As an action, you can move along a red line. As an action, you can play a card, and these cards mostly have a location on them. You can play a card to fly to that location. That takes an action in the card. If you're at a location on your card, you can play a card to charter a flight to go anywhere in the world. If you're at a research station, you can take an action to move to a different research station. Or you can pass. And now we hit some of the special abilities for the characters. So for example, in the basic actions, the dispatcher is allowed to move other people's pawns on his turn as if they're his own. And they have to allow this. And the dispatcher has to play the cards to make the movements when those are required. Then we hit special actions. I'm not sure how much different these are from basic, except that the basic are all movement. These should be movement actions. These should be non-movement actions, I would say. But whatever. Building a research station. And you use a research station in order to investigate and discover a cure to a disease. It also obviously helps with the shuttle flights. And this, you have to play a card and use an action in order to build a research station. And you just put one of these little white things on the board. If there aren't enough on the board, if there aren't enough left off the board, you pull one off of somewhere else and move it. Discovering a cure. In this case, and this is the goal of the game, is to discover cures to all 4 diseases before they eradicate humanity or turn into something much worse. Okay, so you have to be in a space with a research station, and you have to discard 5 cards of the same color. These guys look yellow. See if we have anything that's not yellow. Aha. So here we have, it's the color is here. So this is the black disease. This is the yellow disease. So you have to discard a pile of cards of the color of that disease, and then you can then you've discovered a cure for that disease, and you mark that with a little vial. And that means you can start curing people at faster rates. Once you eradicate the disease, it flips over to sunshine because everything's happy, or it's an atomic attack or something. I don't know. Okay. Once you discover a cure, and one character, so characters have advantages here. The operations engine expert doesn't have to play a card when he wants to build a research station. That's a big bonus. He can just drop one wherever he wants as an action. A scientist only needs 4 cards of the color to discover the disease, and we have one of them in the game. We have everything except the ops expert. Treating the disease. Okay, in order to treat the disease, if you have if you take an action, you can pull 1 cube off the board in a space you're in. You're just helping the people. Now, if you already have the cure, right? If the players have discovered a cure, instead of removing 1 cube, you can remove everything in one city of that disease as your action. If you already have the cure and you've wiped out all instances of the disease, it's been contained, it's been eradicated. The medic is always able to do a remove all cubes when he treats disease, and he freely administers the cure. He doesn't even have to spend an action to remove all the cubes if there's been a cure done. Share knowledge. This is an action that you take to give or take cards from other players. Each card that you move costs one action, and the two-player pawns, and these represent the players, that are sharing have to be in the same space. The reason you want to do this is to collect, for example, one big reason is to collect 5 of one color. So somebody could say, hey, I have 4 blacks, I need 1 more, can you help me? You know, you can't actually show each other your cards, but you can discuss them as much as you like. What this means is people have this segmentation of knowledge because they don't have the ability to just look all over the board and look at all the cards. Now, I think maybe in the basic game you're allowed to leave the cards face up, which is a helpful way to learn the game maybe, but all right. So now the special character here is the researcher, and he can give we've got other restrictions here. You can only transfer the card for that city in a transfer card operation. So that's going to be difficult if you don't have the researcher. The researcher has the ability to transfer cards regardless of what the name of the city is. And it's only when he's giving a card, he can only receive cards the same way other people do. Wow. But the researcher can utilize this ability when he's involved in share research on other players' turns. So yeah, there's a serious limitation. It's going to be hard to share cards. Even if I say I need a black card, we're going to have to figure out how to get that transfer into place. Alright, drawing cards is fairly simple. You draw 2 from the deck. If you break 7, or on a share cards operation if you break 7, you have to discard down or play these special event cards, which immediately take effect and they can be played at any time. Okay, let's go to the final thing. Well, not quite. In here, like we know, there are epidemic cards. If you draw one of those, a few things happen. One is the infection rate goes up. Then you take the bottom card from this pile and add 3 cubes to the city on that pile, and then the card goes into on that card, and then the card goes into the discard pile. Now, if a city ever has 3 cubes already, or is getting more than 3 cubes because of an epidemic, because of something else, it ends up having an outbreak, and we'll hit that when we get to playing the Infector, which is the 3rd stage in the game. But drawing cards can cause an epidemic 6 times in the game, actually. If all the cubes that are in the reserve for a particular disease are used up and you need to put another one on, the game is over. You lose, or all the players lose. And also the intensity of the infection is increased. And the way that happens is you take this pile, you shuffle it, and then it goes back on top, which means the areas that are already infected are going to be reinfected. The cards that already came into play are going to come up again. Now, of course, if you've cured some of those areas, it could just be them reactivating, but to a large part, that could be really, really ugly. Okay, now let's go to the 3rd part of your turn, which is playing the Infector. And at that point, you draw a number of cards from here equal to the infection rate. And remember, that goes up as epidemics go up. And you add 1 cube to the city indicated. Now here we also can have those outbreaks. When we have an outbreak, which is when you have to add a cube to a city that has 3 already, then instead of adding another cube of that color, you have an outbreak that puts a cube of that color in every adjacent city. And if that causes a city, if that's going to be the 4th cube of that color in a city, that causes another outbreak, or a chain reaction of these can happen. The only thing is, you don't go back. So for example, let's say these were here. If I put a yellow cube here, that would cause a chain, an outbreak, and we'd have blocks here and here. We'd have a block here. We'd also get one here. Well, we can't. That causes an outbreak. Well, then that adds a cube here and here, but it doesn't go back here. All right. Every time a city has an outbreak, though, the outbreak marker goes up. And when it hits the skull and crossbones, the game is over and the players have lost again. So now, you can lose the game by 3 means. If you add a disease token to the board and you don't have one to add, like if you're trying to add one and there isn't one in the stock, you lose. We hit this. 8 outbreaks, you lose. Or, if the player draw pile runs out, this doesn't get reshuffled, you lose. So there's a strict time limit. And how do you win? You win by finding the cures to all diseases. You don't have to wipe the diseases out. You just have to discover the cures. And that's pretty cool. So we'll give this a shot, see how it works. I haven't done a cooperative in solo, or actually I haven't done one in solo at all. I may have done the cities game at some point. And this one is purely cooperative. So it should be an interesting experience for me. Let's see what happens.